Hello, fellow human, on this bittersweet adventure of being alive, and welcome back to Why Your Life Really Matters, the podbook. Now, in the last chapter, I suggested that to understand spirituality in a new way and how it fits in with our knowledge of everything else, we needed a new ontology, a new way of understanding what existence is. And I used a simple AI metaphor to go, look, this is the differentiation of an essential oneness. That the process of becoming, which I'm suggesting is existence. There's nothing outside, because what exists is the process of becoming, is the differentiation of something which we could call one, or undifferentiated. And in this chapter, I want to explore how this can help us understand spiritual awakening in a new way. Now, I've been exploring the experience of awakening since I was very young. And in the last more than 2 decades, I've traveled the world introducing people to the experience so they can have it themselves. And it's a very profound experience. And in later chapters, I'll point to how you can experience it for yourself. But right now, I want to question, what is it? Well, one of the ways that people very often describe it is that it's an experience of oneness. That you go from feeling like an isolated individual in this vast universe to feeling one with the universe. And what does that mean? And what could that be? So I think we can use this new ontology to understand this in a new way. Now, like most people, when I had this experience when I was very young, it set me off trying to understand it and looking at the different spiritual traditions, which I subsequently wrote books on and so forth. And I adopted their views of what it was. And a common view is that it's an experience of something which is at the beginning of existence, something which is outside, a consciousness, a big mind, a God, that from which the whole universe is arising. Now, obviously, our predecessors didn't know it was an evolutionary process, but that idea has been continued in spirituality, even amongst those who do think it's an evolutionary process now, that there's something outside and that's what you're conscious of when you awaken. And I want to, in this chapter, suggest a radically different understanding, which I've come to after a long period of deep reflection on this, to really understand what it is that I and others are experiencing, and what's the best way to understand or interpret that experience. And my conviction that the old way is not the best way. I don't think that's right anymore. So when I say, look, this is the evolution of differentiation, that's information. That's what has evolved. There's an essential oneness, which is a common idea in nearly every philosophy, I would say. The universe is a universe, and that process of becoming is the differentiation of something which starts very simple and turns into this magnificent thing that we're experiencing. So what's that essential oneness? Well, it's kind of nothing. I'll try and say this as clearly as I can. It's tricky. I don't mean one of something. There's not one mind, one consciousness, there's not one anything. The whole point that I'm suggesting is the undifferentiated is undifferentiated. And there's nothing outside this process of becoming, because that is what existence is. So there's nothing that exists outside of the process of existing, the process of becoming. So when I say it's one, I mean the same as when I go the mathematical idea of one, something which is undifferentiated, undivided. So it's not it's not one apple or one tomato, it's just one. And what I'm been suggesting is that the mistake we've made historically, for absolutely understandable reasons, is that human beings have taken ideas that are relevant to the human level and projected them back to the foundational level. Now we understand it's a process of evolution, we can see what a mistake that is. So the language of a consciousness or a big mind with intentions who creates the universe or manifests the universe, or any of those ideas, which are very, very common, and I've had them myself and they've been in my previous books, that is a mythic, anachronistic use of language. It's taking language from one level, the human level, and applying it to a primitive level where it just doesn't work. The language we need on the primitive level, we've discovered, is the language of mathematics. Because mathematics deals with pure informational relationships, which is why it doesn't deal with how much I love my daughter. I'm not going to deal with that with mathematics. But this level, mathematics. And when we say the one, when I say the one, I just mean one, undivided. What other qualities does it have? None. None. It has no qualities, because all the qualities are the arriving of the differentiation. That's what qualities are. The very primitive one, we discussed this a little bit in the last chapter. We'll go into all of this as we go through, deeper and deeper and deeper. Just trying to get the general picture right now. But the simplest piece of information is this or that. So that's one piece of information, which is relationship, this or that, two-ness. The one is two. And from that, it's going to come everything. That's the essential idea. So what does that mean for the experience of awakening, where you go, I feel one with everything? What's happening there? I think it's actually something remarkable in both its simplicity and its profundity. That what's happening, whether you know it or not, whether it's happening spontaneously and unconsciously in that sense, or whether you've learned to focus your attention on it, you're aware of that essential oneness. And you can do it now. I'm aware of it as I speak. This is my experience. The world, the universe, is made up of all these different systems interacting. They're all relatively individual. But it is also a one. And perhaps the only word I can use is to say there's a oneness of being. It's what the Zen teachers, I think, mean by the isness of things. There's a oneness of being. Everything is being. Everything in existence is existing. It's not a revelation, but we don't pay attention to it normally. And if you pay attention, especially if you learn to go deeply into it, it is extraordinary, because suddenly you're an individual system, but you're an individual system within this oneness. So there's a oneness of being arising as everything, as that is differentiated into me, into you, into the floor, into the sky, into the stars, everything. And as you get that, there's a big shift in your idea of who you are. And that leads to a very big shift in your experience of who you are. Now, the word I prefer than oneness is really communion, because that arises through, or that oneness as Tim is able to be conscious of the oneness. And Tim then feels that he is communing with union, with oneness. That's not actually the etymology, but that's how we've inherited it from St. Augustine. But let's go with that, because it's a lovely way of understanding it. With union, from the Latin. We're communing with the universe. So I'm no longer this skin bag, as Alan Watts called it, this little individual. I'm communing with everything. And that makes that's a big shift. We'll go into how to experience this. You may get it now, though. I'm just getting it as I'm talking about it, so I'm getting distracted. So, if you focus on that oneness, that it's formless. That's another word. It's non-dual, not two. It's the thing which is arising as two. It's not a thing. It's not anything. It's a nothing, really. And which is why in the spiritual traditions, and you can have this yourself, if you really, especially if you go into meditation, deep meditation, that's the way it happens for me, is why you understand why people go, it's the void. It's the emptiness, especially in the Buddhist tradition. You hear this a lot. It's the formless. It has no form. It isn't anything. It's a kind of a nothing that is being differentiated into everything. And if you look around you now and you can get the oneness and you go, well, what's the quality that makes everything one? Well, just being. There's nothing else. In every other respect, everything's different. Everything is differentiated into itself. So the first thing I want to explore in this chapter is, look, it seems to me that what's happening when we experience these emergent states, very emergent states, I'm going to say they are the leading edge of the process of evolution in many ways, is when an individual human being recognizes they are also one with the universe. They're also one with the universe. And because I think that is right at the leading edge of the evolutionary process, it's not that common, but there's more and more people experiencing it in their own different ways. I've coined a name for it so we can talk about it. And I'm suggesting that what's happening is that the individual, Tim, you, is evolving into what I've called a univigil. The individual is evolving into a univigil. And a univigil is an individual who is now becoming conscious of being one with the universe. And that this is right there at so that this spiritual experience, far from being like an anomaly or an illusion, I want to explore, it's incredibly important. It's part of the next evolutionary jump, which is why we need a spirituality that understands it in a new way to make that next evolutionary jump. And I've called this whole philosophy that I'm exploring with you Unividualism, because you're probably like me. I hate isms because they've got such a bad name, and there's been some horrible isms. But we need names to talk about things. So by giving this philosophy a name, unividualism, it means we can talk about it. You can say you like it, you hate it, this is right with it, this is wrong with it. It becomes a thing which we can pass between us now. So I've given it a name, and I've chosen that name because this, more than anything else, this philosophy is about supporting that next evolutionary jump from the individual to the unividual. And as we go through, you're going to see why I think this is so significant in understanding the significance of your life, why your life really matters. Okay, so far I've gone, look, the oneness is just a oneness. It's just the one. It's undifferentiated. It's not anything special. It's not something creating this. It's not something outside. There is nothing outside. It's not a mysterious thing which is more complex at the beginning that intends to know itself. And none of that. We don't need any of that mythic stuff anymore. We can understand it simpler, which is the whole thing is je. However, there's more to be said. Yes, you can focus on that oneness in meditation and so forth and go, yeah, it's an emptiness. It's the void, as the Buddhists say, and the formless. But you can also, and I find this more compelling myself, you can focus on it as the fullness, which is, there's a underlying undifferentiatedness that is differentiated as everything, and therefore I'm embedded within it. I am, as Tim, absolutely within this oneness. The oneness that's differentiated as me is the oneness that is differentiated as you. And that's a very powerful mystical experience, to use the old term, if you go into it. But there's another level again, and it's that one I want to focus on to end this chapter, which is very often, certainly in my life, if you focus on that communion, you want to say, I'm in touch with something greater than myself here. And the traditional name for that is God. I'm in touch with something greater, something beautiful, something loving, something wise, something I can hardly grasp, but I'm in it. I know it. I'm relating to it, and in communion, I'm in communion with it. And that really is the most extraordinary experience I've ever had, for sure. Just wow. So what's that? Doesn't that contradict everything I've just said? Because the natural intuition that human beings have had when they've had that experience is, oh, this must be the source. This must be where it's all coming from. This must be the big mind that has created the universe. The intelligence that has created such an amazing... But what's happened for me on my journey is that I've come to think that's wrong. That actually, this big mind, this super being, is not the source. It's actually the latest emergent. It's the leading edge of the evolutionary process. This thing is more than. There's nothing outside the process of becoming. And it is the most emergent level of the process of becoming, not the source. So one of the things which we explored in the last chapter, which I can articulate now, is to go, we don't need to think of there being a creator, because the evolutionary process is the evolution of creativity. We don't need to think that there is something intelligent. We don't need to think of this as a product of intelligent design, because the universe is the evolution of intelligence, in that AI sense of intelligence. It's learning how to do this, all the algorithms that's going to lead to everything until it's leading to you and I on this level. Well, maybe there's another level. Maybe that process has already made another jump on from us. And that's what I'm going to suggest to you. And I'm going to just begin to explore it here. During the whole process of these systems forming, there has been, from time to time, an important jump whereby systems that may be working together, like, all the molecules in a glass of water work together in the sea, but they're all separate, and there's just it's not one integrated system. But occasionally what's happened is there's been an integration of separate systems into a greater whole, a greater holon. And one of the key examples of that is you and me, where these individual cells have moved from being a whole clump, like a slime mold, say, where they're all just clumping together. They're kind of working together, but they're all individual, to being an integrated whole, where trillions and trillions of cells have come into this, have been integrated into a super system, which is you. That's what you are. And not just you, all, so much of life is that. All multicellular life is that. What I want to suggest, and I'm just going to touch on it now, and we'll keep on going deeper, is that something similar is happening, where human beings who exist on this level of psyche or soul, and we'll go into what the psyche is, how it evolved shortly. But we exist, we're experiencing it now, this non-material level of psyche and soul. That when human beings come into this communion with the oneness of the universe, we come into communion with other humans who are in communion. And we don't, we don't need to be conscious that that's happening. We're conscious of whatever we're focusing on. We're not conscious of that necessarily, but that is what has been happening. And especially as we'll explore in a later chapter, I think this is happening to psyches or souls in the after-death state. But the idea I want to just put in place for you here is that what's happening is that human systems on the level of the psyche are coming together to form a super system. Just like cells came together, came into communion to make a communion of cells, which is you as a biological entity, on the level of the psyche, psyches or souls are coming into a communion, forming an integrated system, which it's like, look, just as every cell in this body has no idea what it's like to be Tim, every psyche which is forming the super system doesn't know what it's like to be the super system. But you know what it's like to commune in it. And it feels amazing. So if we use our computer analogy, and here it gets a little bit wobbly, a bit crass maybe, but you take a whole load of computer systems, AI systems, and plug them all together, and bang, you can have a super AI system. And in a comparable way, if we're careful, you take all of these highly intelligent systems, which are recognizing also the oneness of everything, they integrate into a super system. And that's what we experience as God. And it exists. It absolutely exists. That would be my claim from my experience. And you can know it. And when you do, it's amazing. It's just extraordinary. So, when we enter that state of awakening, you may focus on the emptiness and go, oh, it's all void. It's all non-dual. It's all formless. Okay. Or you may focus on the all and go, oh, it's all one, including me. And that'll blow your mind. And as part of that, you may go, oh, and part of what I'm one with is this super soul, this super system, what would be called God. Now, the G word is very difficult for a lot of people because it creates this idea of the big man or the big mind at the beginning of the universe. But I want to end this chapter with why this exploring this possibility seems so important to me. Because the idea of God at the beginning just doesn't work. Not if you think it through. It's like if there's a God that runs the universe, created it, that God is a very strange God. Because if it was about wanting to get to this place where we were conscious, and it took 14 billion years. And then even then with life, we had 250 million years of dinosaurs before we got on to anything having a spiritual experience. It's like this God is a mad God. There were 5 complete extinctions. This God doesn't know what they're doing. And this is why the post-scientific view has swept away that old mythic God and gone, this is crazy. And the God is mean because there's so much unnecessary suffering in nature. I mean, I hear people say things like, well, you need suffering so you can know joy. And it's like, really? Maybe, but you don't need that little parasite that can get into a child's ear and eat its brain from the inside. You don't need that. You just don't. So this idea of God is abhorrent. It doesn't work. And yet, I experience this amazing, benign, beautiful, loving presence. How can that be? It's because this isn't a God at the beginning who designed all this. There isn't a God at the beginning who's mad and crazy and mean and... No. This super being, this big mind, is made up of all these little minds. And it's not running the show, it's responding to the show, just like I am and you are. It's looking at it just as we look at it and go, that is beautiful, but that's horrible. Let's change that. That's what it's doing, which is why when you tune into it, you get that same goodness and compassion that you may feel in your most emergent state, but turned up to 11. That's incredible benevolence. That benevolence that you feel towards yourself and towards your family and towards your friends, and suddenly it's universal. It's a universal benevolence towards everything and everyone. Now, how we understand that, how we live with that, that's a whole nother subject, which we will come on to. But for now, in this chapter, here's what I've been trying to say. Spiritual awakening, becoming a unividual, I want to suggest, is the leading edge of the process of evolution, because it is you or me beginning to integrate ourselves into this beautiful super system, this super soul, this what I experience as a sublime presence, more than that I can connect with in the psyche. And we'll go through how you do that, what that means. So that we connect to this unividual system in which we're all plugging into something greater than us, and that is transformative for us. So the oneness is just one, and it's differentiated into all of this, and no one's planning it. It is the evolution of intelligence and creativity until it's reached us. And at this level, we have the ability to consciously explore the universe and at some point go, oh wow, I'm one with it. I'm one with the universe. There's a oneness of being. It's like a field of being, which is differentiated as everything, including me. I'm one with you. I'm individual. I'm that oneness as Tim. You're that oneness as you, but we're also one. And that shifts it. And then to go, oh, and not just am I one with everything in the biological or even the psychic, there's another level, isn't there? That as I come into the oneness, I'm relating to and then I'm communing with. I am one with God. I'm one with God. But God in this new sense. Not as some monster at the beginning, but as the universe flowering into something utterly amazing. And I'm going to be exploring how one of the central reasons your life really matters is you get to be part of that flowering into God. Join me in the next chapter to explore the nature of consciousness and psyche and emotion. And if you'd like to explore the nature of God or the super soul experientially with me, check out my future events on my website.